Hello and welcome to Two Drink Maximum. We have another exciting episode for you today. Welcome, welcome.
Welcome. I'm your host, Shane Byerly.
I'm your other host, Chase Baxter.
Oh, man. We are excited. We got a great episode for you guys today. We are joined. It's rare to say you're joined by a legend in the music industry, but we are actually joined by one today. We have Chris Dodge here in the studio with us. Hi, Chris.
Oh,
yeah.
Is that just me?
Round of applause. Yeah, absolutely.
Legends deserve applause.
Thank you so much for coming to take the time to join us today.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd say legend is a stretch. Not just a tiny stretch.
Legend is in the eye of the beholder.
Yes.
Tall tale maker.
Yes, and you have good eyes. So.
That's true, yeah, as I take my glasses off.
Exactly.
So as we usually start here on the show, what are we drinking today?
We are drinking Michter's bourbon.
Nice.
Which you were kind enough to
Procure.
Procure.
Purloin.
Yeah. I'm just pleased it's not gin today. We've had a streak of gin on the past shows.
Yeah. We're not gin fans.
I like
That's
bourbon.
cool.
Yeah.
And why Michter's? What does it mean to you?
Well, what it means to me, well, first of all, I live in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
I say Louisville.
Louisville.
That's what the locals say. So you're a local there now.
You got to
Yeah.
drop some letters.
Made myself, you have to drink like, or you
have to say it like you've been drinking.
I haven't even had a drink yet. You have to drink like your bourbon. You have to speak like you've been drinking bourbon.
Yes,
indeed.
Louisville.
Fair.
So, but I chose it because it's pretty much my favorite. And
Nice.
I mean, it's in a town full of favorites. I mean, it's the bourbon capital of the universe.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what I like about Michter's is that unlike all the Buffalo Trace family, which I genuinely love. I mean, obviously everything the Pappy, the E.H. Taylor, the Eagle Rare, just Buffalo Trace itself.
Yeah.
It's you go down the whole laundry list. But the thing is, that whole Buffalo Trace thing is like way too sexy. And by sexy,
Way too sexy.
I mean like
Too sexy.
I mean, yeah, it's like everybody wants it. It's like it's the bourbon du jour or do whatever the word for year rather is. You know?
Exactly.
Like everybody. Every morning they'll line up for hours, before Buffalo Trace opens to go into the gift shop, and because they put a premium brand on the shelf, like a different one every day, and so one day it'll be Blanton's, one day it'll be
it's the
Taylor.
supreme of bourbon.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, and Michter's is just cool. Michter's, and no one's making a big fuss about it, but it's Exactly. It's genuinely incredible. It's
But not for drinking at work.
Yeah,
right.
It's
Exactly.
accessible. That's the thing is like you can't just find all the Buffalo Trace brands in the store because everybody wants them because they're so
Right.
There's such like a nerd culture behind Buffalo Trace.
Yeah.
And Michter's you could just find anywhere. It's amazing. Your sound guy knows.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
He had it in his desk. I heard. I heard it's like an industry like the
Industry
worst secret
secret.
in the industry is that he had bourbon in his desk.
Daddy's go-go juice. That's what we call it.
Exactly.
Well, cheers, guys.
Yeah, we're
Cheers.
excited. Let's taste it.
Yeah. Ooh, that is nice. I mean, I think all of us put a rock in it, so it's cold, but
Very smooth.
delicious. Yeah, little notes of vanilla and honey on it. Back end, very nice. Yeah. Well, thank you. Good selection.
Okay, I can tell, honey. I've been trying to cultivate my alcohol flavor tongue.
Are you calling me honey, or
That's
just-
not the thing to call it.
That's a good name for a band. Alcohol flavor.
Alcohol
tongue. Yeah.
flavor tongue. I guess my palate for alcohol
Yeah.
is the correct way to phrase that. But I'm starting to taste additional things other than just the burn of alcohol.
See, we're getting you there. This show is teaching not only
learning.
the audience things, it's teaching, yeah. So, as I said before, I mean, Chris truly has been in so many bands, so many huge bands over the years, and has done so much music. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you've been making music your whole life. Like, I read that you had been, like, in 5th grade, you were trying to start a punk band.
I was in grade school. Actually, when I first met, one of my best friends when I was a kid was Steve Papoutsis, who I met in kindergarten, and jump forward many years to junior high, and that's when we started like trying to play in punk bands.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to play guitar, but I just borrowed a guitar from someone. I had no idea how to tune it. But our friend Rory Koff, who you know what's coming, who was a drummer, and he actually knew how to play.
Yeah.
Kind of fast. I'm like, okay, cool. No. You just make a whole bunch of noise, and one guy yells, and that's the origin
energy.
story. Yeah, exactly. So you're like 13, you just make a bunch of noise and
getting a lot of that angst out.
yeah, exactly. So there's so much to be angry about.
Yeah, 13-year-olds
I'm
are
in the
notorious.
suburbs. This sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate it. So you play guitar and bass. I mean, but guitar was your first. You didn't start with bass.
I started on guitar, and actually I only moved to bass because everybody played guitar, and I wanted to be in a band.
Yeah.
And everyone played guitar, and everyone needed a bass player. I'm like, well,
there you go.
And I never took bass lessons. I just looked at the bass. I'm like,
I can do that.
Yeah, I was like, well, it's a guitar minus 2 strings. I could probably do it.
That's why I started playing bass when I was young, because I was like, it's two less strings. I can do this. The guitar is too many strings. I can't do it.
Surrounded by all these bass heads.
Yeah.
I started to play the trumpet as a first instrument way back when. I was not good at it.
Well,
but
you could have been in a ska band.
That's right. Could have been in a ska band.
Well, mine was kind of a similar situation. I only got stuck with the trumpet because the band that I was a part of was like, that's the only chair we have left available for anybody to come into our band program.
Yeah.
So I was like, I guess I'm playing the trumpet.
I guess I'm playing trumpet, boys.
Yeah. Well, so obviously some of your young buddies, like that, one of the first big bands that you got associated with was the very famous punk band No Use for a Name.
Yeah.
So, and you were one of the founding members of that band. That's awesome.
It was me, Steve, who I mentioned, Rory, who was a drummer till almost the very end.
Yeah.
And the first vocalist was this guy, John Myers. And we
John Mayer.
John Mayer. It was John Mayer. Somebody made it. No one's ever heard of him called John Mayer.
John Mayer Sr.
Yeah. But we started in late '86, I think it was, and it was like, I mean, we were kids, and it was an absolute freaking mess, as you can imagine. And John wasn't really that confident on vocals, so he brought in a second vocalist, this guy Ramon, and then we had another friend, this guy Doug, who also played guitar in this local band in Sunnyvale called the Barfing Dogs.
Nice.
So he joined. So it was like 6 guys.
I'm going to interrupt for a second. I'm just pleased at all the potential amazing band names we're going to hear on this episode.
Oh yeah.
No Use for a Name to Barfing Dogs.
Yeah. But yeah, it was. I mean, a 6-member band playing like thrashy punk, and it was just. It was a total mess. It was a total mess.
So, but No Use for a Name was probably the first band that you were associated with, where at some point you were like, "Whoa, this is a song. Like, we have a song here."
Yeah. It was actually like a genuine song, and we recorded something. Like,
That's awesome.
It actually sounds like something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Officially musicians. At
Yeah,
that point.
exactly. Official.
Yeah. I mean, I think when most people hear the name No Use for a Name, they think of Tony Sly, obviously, who's no longer with us. You were in and out of the band. Well, you were in the band a couple of times, but I think you left the band originally before he joined, right?
It was right when Tony was joining. Actually, there was one practice we had, and I think... I don't. It doesn't really matter. But Tony, that's when I first met Tony. He came in and was playing guitar, and then at that point, I think I'd quit early on.
Yeah.
And then kind of staggered over several years. Like I think maybe the first 5 or 6 years of the band, I was just in and out. And I kept rejoining because people were always quitting the band, and so they'd call me up and be like, "Oh, can you?"
You were first on the list.
Yeah, exactly. Like, "Oh, so and so quit. Can you? We got this show. Can you come play?" I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then I'd be in the band again, and I was on vocals, and I was terrible as a vocalist, but it didn't matter.
Yeah, it's punk,
And
man.
then, and then I left again, and I came back again on guitar, and that at that point it was starting to form, but not quite. I mean, once Tony was, really kind of settling in, he wasn't the lead vocalist yet. Like it wasn't No Use for a Name wasn't what No Use for a Name was meant to be. And they were starting to go in this, it was like the early 90s, and they were going for like this, this metallic sort of like this chug like dum, dum,
More towards metal.
Yeah.
Like they're leaning towards metal, and it was a time when like punk and hardcore wasn't considered cool anymore, and there's like crossover bands.
Because at that point, grunge was kind of all anybody was
Starting to show up in the world. So I guess for those who are unfamiliar with some of these individuals you're naming, like what is the genre of punk that you were operating in for these bands?
If No Use for a Name would have, I mean, at that, I don't know. It eventually became kind of like melodic hardcore, I guess you'd call it. But at that point, like I was saying, for a while they're trying to go for like the whole metallic, like tough guy sort of thing, which clearly wasn't.
It doesn't fit.
It was definitely off brand.
Yeah.
So probably one of the best things that happened was for Tony, at whatever point someone left, probably me, and then Tony took over on vocals, and they're like, "Oh, hey, Tony's actually 1,000 times better on vocals than I am," and then like, "Oh, by the way, trying to be a tough guy metal band, macho sort of thing, that is lame. So maybe we should." And Tony's favorite bands were the Police, Squeeze, bands like that. And so he started like integrating that in there, and then it eventually got more melodic and like, oh, hey, you know, and then you kind of fold into the NoFX world where they're the same. And a lot of those bands, I remember Fat Mike even telling me that kind of what changed NoFX early on was the release of Suffer by Bad Religion. Yeah. That influence, I mean, that was like kind of the linchpin for all of those, you know, like the Southern California melodic hardcore bands. It was like a roadmap of like, oh, this is actually cool. We should do this. So I didn't follow that roadmap. I went to the AAA and I got a completely different state. I went down a different road entirely. Yeah, but
exactly. So when you kept joining back in the band, what's that like? Like, I imagine you're just joining for tours essentially, right? So it's like, how many songs on average would you say are like, okay, I got 5-6 songs I need to learn new now versus like, okay, these 10 oldies that we always play in the shows, I got these.
It was mostly, every time I'd come back, it was mostly new stuff.
Oh, really?
So you were always learning.
Yeah. I was always learning stuff from scratch because all the old stuff was out the window. And yeah.
Did it feel like you like? Did you always feel like you were a little step behind, or was it always like, oh, I got this? It's punk. It's like it's four chords, man.
It's not like that. It was that difficult, but also I don't know. For longest time, I was pretty lazy as a musician too, and so I didn't really step up as much as I could have in that regard. Especially like when Tony took the reins, I'm like, well, I'm just gonna follow your lead. Yeah. I mean, you're a way better songwriter.
I'm here for the party.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's your vision, and at that point they were starting to build it up to a band that actually had a following, as opposed to you know, the first 5 years where nobody gave a shit.
Right.
And it's like, oh, hey, you guys are going to Europe, and you want me to come along? All right. Tell me what songs to play. Yeah. Let's go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay. So in and out of in and out of No Use for a Name for a little bit. And then, I mean, eventually I think one of the bands that most people probably recognize you from is Spazz.
Oh, yes.
Right. Yeah. And if you're not familiar with Spazz in the best way possible is like a kick in the face. Like, it is awesome.
It is very visceral.
It's visceral music, right? And Spazz essentially was kind of the you talk about the linchpin. It was the linchpin of the power violence kind of musical movement, right? And so you guys were kind of the linchpin of that. What was the ultimate kick for like, what we're doing in No Use for a Name isn't really working for me? I want to go harder. I want to go faster.
Well, that was kind of my MO from the very beginning. Like, I was always into, even when I was really little, I always was like, you know, I'm like 8 years old. I'm like, I want to hear hard rock.
Yeah.
I want hard rock.
Yeah.
You know, and so I want to listen to AC/DC because they're hard rock.
Yeah.
You know, and even before I knew what punk rock was, and kind of, so I always, you know, unconsciously gravitated that way anyway. And then, you know, going back to my buddy Steve, who's in No Use for Name, he had a much older brother-in-law who was into punk, like, you know, this was like late 70s, early 80s. So it was like the first wave of punk rock. And so I started hearing those records, and it was totally foreign to me. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
Because I remember, because at the time, I think Steve and I were in like 5th or 6th grade, and we were both really into Kiss.
Yeah.
And so
Kiss rocks.
Yeah. Well,
Detroit Rock City, Love Gun. Great.
So we, he went to his brother-in-law's.
Rock and roll to you.
He came back with these punk records and stuff, and he came over to my house with a Cramps album. He's like, these guys are better than Kiss. I'm like, what? There's nobody better than Kiss.
Like, take that filth out of your mouth.
Yeah.
There's no way that's even possible. So, it was the first Cramps album, the songs that the Lord taught us, and the first song on there, TV Set. And you have to, if you don't know it, you go listen to it because the guitar solo in it isn't a guitar solo; it's just noise, just
just scraping a pick against the
yeah, exactly. And I didn't think it was that great. I'm like, oh, this is not better than Kiss, by the way. But we listened to the rest of the album, and I got it. And so he kept bringing all these records and like, you know, Weirdos and the Dickies and stuff like that, and you know, early Misfits and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. And so that's what I always went towards, like harder, faster, whatever. So throughout the 80s, I was always looking for, okay, what's like the fastest band?
Yeah.
Like I was always in pursuit of like, what record has the most songs on it?
Yeah, I mean, was it always the energy you were seeking inside those types of songs?
Yeah.
Just that feel
just
of
high power, just high energy.
Go out there and go insane for 3 minutes.
Yeah. Just, and found the first DRI album. It's like, what? It has 22 songs on it, and none of them are over a minute. Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And so, that's the very circuitous way of answering your question of, No Use for a Name. I mean, during the 80s, even like the harder, thrashier bands were playing with the more melodic bands, or like peace punk bands were playing with the, like Discharge and I don't know, Discharge and Descendants and the Dickies would all be on the same bill, and it wouldn't be weird because the punk scene was kind of finite, and it's all punk, and we all like punk. And then I think only towards the end of the 80s into the 90s was when it kind of started.
Sure, a lot of people were seeking out that sound coming off of like the glam world of rock.
Yeah.
Like, all right, that's a little too pretty. Let's back it up.
Yeah, it had to be a reaction to that for sure.
How vitriolic, did it ever fade? I think that's one of the only negative things about punk rock is that punks are always arguing about what is or is not punk rock, which I think is the least punk thing you could do is arguing about what is or is not punk.
Yeah, exactly.
But was that always prevalent even even in the No Use for Name, the Spazz days, people were still arguing like Spazz is too hard to be punk or this, that, whatever.
It's always been one of those things that people argue about that doesn't matter. Yeah.
Everyone's a critic.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, and so the thing was like playing with No Use for a Name, like I'd always wanted to be in like a fast thrashy band like DRI or something like that. I was 15. I don't have any friends who know how to play like Discharge or whatever. I'm not going to be in a band like that, but it's attainable for me and my friends to get together and we fuck around and play some some shitty punk songs, and this is fun.
Break some rules, make some badass sounds.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
And so then eventually, and I just kind of as I was describing how the sound of the band kept changing, and I just didn't like it, as the years went by, and I keep joining, and it was fun for, I'd be in it for a year. I'd be like, this just isn't my thing.
It's not your thing.
I just don't love it, And so I was always looking for like a faster band. So then
you were an old school Jack White where you just had like 40 projects you jump between all the time.
Yeah. No, it's true. I've over the years I've been in like a stupid amount of bands. It's not because I'm deliberately trying to be prolific or whatever, but I just always like to do something new.
Yeah.
I've always, one of my favorite things has been to always write and record. I like to put out records.
Yeah.
Just nonstop. Like once a record's done, before it even comes out, I like to okay, what are we writing now? And you just keep writing, because that, to me, that's the most satisfying part of it.
Yeah.
I don't want to learn the same set and play it ad nauseum until I'm almost 55,
Yeah.
The audience wants the old stuff. The
true.
musicians always want to make something new.
They're like, oh, here's a new song, and they're like, oh, it's bathroom break. Let's is this when we go?
But they always come back and love it later. It's like
exactly.
on tour, they give me everything I already have seen.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so Spazz was the first band that you were involved. Well, maybe not the first band, but the first big band in a sense that you were kind of in control of the direction of it. You loved the music of it.
Yeah.
That was the first band that really kind of hit where you started touring everywhere with Spazz, right? You went kind of all over.
We did a 7-week U.S. tour, and
Yeah. Tough.
Yeah. In addition to just like smaller things here and there, we went to Japan.
Oh wow.
We never made it to Europe, but I mean at that time
they don't have appreciation for the finer things over there.
Well, we wanted to go to Europe.
I think they fall into like the heavy, like dark death metal stuff over there a little more.
Well, there were people in Europe who were like, "Oh, you should come over and play," and like, yeah, we should.
Get us our tickets. We'll be there.
Yeah, exactly. Make it happen. I mean, it wasn't like now, days of the internet, you can actually you can set up your own tour. You can.
Oh, right.
Yeah, anywhere you want to go. You just look up promoters or talk to other bands. Like, oh, who should I contact?
Y'all had to do everything analog.
Yeah. It's all like, I find this magazine, Book Your Own Fucking Life. I don't know if you ever saw that. It's the thing that Maximum Rock and Roll published. I think they put one out once a year, and people would contribute lists of cool punk venues and stores awesome. And places to stay and whatever.
Nice.
And so people started using that as a resource guide of doing stuff like setting up tours and I want to distribute my records. How do I contact these record stores? And just send them all a postcard and see if they want to buy your record, stuff like that.
Snail mail.
Yeah, totally. So point being, getting to Europe, unless someone's like, hey, I want to bring you guys to Europe. We're going to book a tour. There's absolutely no way. What are we going to like send out 50 letters and be like, hey, we want to book. Can we play your
Andy
club
Dufresne
on this
that
day?
shit. Send a letter every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
And like you'd send out 50 letters, and who knows if you're ever going to get them back 6 weeks later or whatever. Yeah, but
You
still,
might have already quit the band by then.
right, exactly. Like I'm in my next band by now.
Still, a 7-week tour, that's pretty huge. Did it feel like success at the time, or did it feel like you were schlepping it?
I mean, it didn't feel. We were clearly not like high on the hog or anything like that. But
You were
I mean,
being flown in private jets.
But it was But it was interesting that we were able to kind of like sustain our whole group for like almost 2 months and still come back with a little bit of money in our pocket. Pay for a rental van and all of our gas and all of our food and.
How many hotels did you trash? It was a tour after all.
That's what we do.
That's rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly. Just a lot of floors and. We just made it happen, and it was
very
just
cool.
remarkable that we made it through the whole thing.
And how old was everybody at this time?
This was in '97, so I would have been 28.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a bunch of 20-year-olds rolling around America playing punk rock. So that's pretty badass.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the time of your life right there, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so Spazz is huge, but I mean, I think one of the things to me that's so awesome is, as you said, you love making records, you love putting out records.
Yes.
Not just enough for you to be in a band, you started a record label, right? That's incredible. Slap-a-Ham Records.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not familiar with Slap-a-Ham Records, like you've probably seen some of this stuff because all of your the cartoons that you would do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. It's all your art and all the stuff. So that's pretty awesome too.
Yeah, it was pretty goofy. I mean, the name of the label alone is a slight hint.
The style of.
That's the thing. I've always been a goof.
Cheeky.
And
It's a cheeky name.
Yeah, and since I always liked like really like aggressive hardcore sort of stuff, I just thought it would be really funny. I'm like, what if I started a label that was like completely silly, but like the hardest bands in the hardcore scene really wanted to be on it. And it worked, which was funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, it's all changed in 2023.
Yeah.
So if I asked you today, it would be way different. But okay, you want to start a record label. Cool.
Yeah.
Like you back in the day when you started it, what are the first steps there? Like, you don't have to buy a vinyl pressing machine.
No.
Right? Like,
You didn't have Spotify, you didn't have Apple, you didn't have any sort of streaming
right.
service. You just had terrestrial radio. Still, I think satellite was starting to pop up back then.
No, just college radio. College radio was it. I mean, that's where you find punk rock shows or tape trading. And that was it. Yeah, and zines and like, okay, these are cool records, and you go try and find them, either mail order them or whatever.
Goodness.
But I mean, I was actually very fortunate. I think I had a leg up in starting the label, just in that at the time it was 89. I lived in San Francisco, and at the time I was contributing to Maximum Rock and Roll, the fanzine.
Yeah.
And I'd been playing in bands for a while and been going to Gilman since the very beginning, and like knew all the people in the bands and scene and whatever. And being in San Francisco, there were a bunch of established labels at the time, and I just knew everybody from being around. So Alternative Tentacles, which is Jello Biafra's label, was based there.
Dead Kennedys, if you don't know. BFR,
Was it Foul Records that put out the first Verbal Abuse album? That was it. There was John Yates, the graphic artist. He was he worked at Alternative Tentacles. He started Allied Records. David Hayes, who was one of he and Lawrence Livermore started Lookout.
Okay.
Yeah.
So people like that, I just asked them, like, what do I do? Like, how do I have $900. How do I put out a record? and they just directed me like, okay, well, here's the, you take this to be mastered, and this is how it gets mastered, and contact John Golden. He's in Southern California, and he can master the record for you. Here's a pressing plant. You can reach out to Bill Smith Custom Records or Alberti Records. They'll press them, and if you want colored vinyl, you do this. Here's where you order the labels. Here's where you order the sleeves. Here's where you order the plastic sleeves.
Like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the punk scene. It's
I guess a very friendly community going on.
Yeah.
Confirm a rumor for me. Is there any better feeling than like holding a record in your hand that you're like, I created that? You know what I mean? Like,
I have to tell you that when I put out like the first couple records I put out, I'd like lay them out. And I just like look at them like, whoa.
Yeah.
I just leave.
awe.
Yeah, I just leave them like laid out on display and just like walking around, be like, fuck yeah. like I put that out. I put out this record's out there. This isn't the world.
It's a thing. I made it.
This is part of music history.
It's your I made fire moment.
Yeah. It's like when I was in film school, I like any of my terrible, shitty student projects, I would always burn them on DVD, and then I would spend an inordinate amount of time doing like my own DVD cover, and then I'd like slip it in the shelf like right next to Goodfellas and be like, fuck yeah, I made it. You know what I mean? Like
there's that movie, then there's my movie.
I made it.
Yeah.
So where do your records live? What lives next to your records that you've made on your record shelf?
They're all in a box in my basement.
Really?
Yeah. No, because on my record,
you're saving them. You're preserving them.
Yeah, exactly. No, I keep my collection of everything that I've either put out or released, that I played on. They're in several boxes, and I just keep them in the basement because I don't listen to them. And I've seen them a billion times over the past decades, and it's like I know what they look like, I know what they sound like. I don't care to listen to them, and they're in boxes just so I have them. I used to be a hoarder, and I want a stack of like everything, so I could have like 5 or 10 of each one, and then over the years, just give them out to friends that they'd ask, and eventually I just had to. It wasn't practical because I had so much, and I just had to purge it. Either sell it or give it away, and so now I just have like 1 or 2 of each. Just try and I think I do, and then they're just in the basement. But records I actually listen to are in the house by the stereo. Yeah,
they're primed and ready for whenever you get that call from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
Like these are pristine.
They're preserved. It's an archive.
Actually, it's funny when they first not exactly when they first started, but they'd been around for a while, and it was clear that they were truly archiving things, even from the underground. I did send them, I think, like my first 10 releases or something like that, just so it was somewhere legit in air quotes.
I was making a joke, but you're already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
And actually, but before right before I moved from California, I just tried to purge stuff I'd been schlepping around for decades. I sent them boxes of flyers dating back to the 80s, and awesome. I'd always carry it around because I thought they were cool, but I'm like, what
am I going to do with
they're
these?
In boxes. Like anything that's in boxes, why do I have it? It's just because I give it away doesn't mean that it doesn't exist anymore. Because I don't see it doesn't mean that it's disappeared off the face. If I really want it again, I can find it. I can buy it again on eBay or something, and that's never happened. So I'm not gonna worry about it. But I reached out to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I said, hey, and I sent them photos of just a bunch of them. I'm like, I explained, this is the collection. It's all like punk flyers from all around the world because I used to trade with people, and they're like, yeah, we want them.
Well, and now Fat Mike opened up the Punk Rock Museum in Vegas. So if there's anything
you got to call and get all that stuff back.
Yeah. So one of the records I do want to ask about specifically from Slap a Hand was the Blurg, right? Like that was how many? It was 65 bands.
It was the first one. If I remember, I think it was 41 bands and 64 songs
on a 7-inch record, which is like, all the songs had to be like 42 seconds or something, right?
No,
like
they were like 5 seconds.
5-second songs.
Yeah, because you think about a 7-inch. But what inspired
the
me?
Ultimate sampler.
What inspired me was there was an LP that came out in the early '80s called "We Got Power," which was put out. It was an early LA punk fanzine called "We Got Power," and they put out a compilation album that was 40 bands, and they all had 1-minute songs. And at the time, I was just like, "Oh my God, there's 40 bands on this." And I always thought that was the coolest record. And it was just like, 1-minute thrash songs, one after the other. I'm like, what if I did that but on a 7-inch?
Yeah.
And like even faster and even crazier. So that
belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah. And it is, right? It's in there.
I think I sent them a copy.
Hell yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah.
Well, speaking of getting more things in compact spaces, we all need another drink. So we're going to take a quick 5 here. We'll see you back for the second drink. You know, Jason and I might be new to the podcast game, but we do know enough that the best podcast should be recorded in an environment that really kind of spurs your creativity. And we're lucky enough to record our podcast in the Muse Rooms, which is a creative co-working shared space that we are proud to have as a sponsor, and we could not be more excited.
Yeah, you can check out the Muse Rooms online to learn more about their services and the spaces they have here. Lots of really great stuff. That is themuserooms.com. That's M-U-S-E for Muse. You can also check them out on Instagram at the Muse Rooms. But have a look at it. There's tons of great amenities. It's a really wonderful environment, like you said, and it just goes a long way in making our show amazing.
Agreed. We couldn't be happier, and we think you might be too. So please check out the Muse Rooms, and we will see you there.
Yeah, and now for part 2. Welcome back from the break. We are here with Chris Dodge, punk aficionado, producer, bass player, lead singer, all kinds of things. Just
keep going.
Record executive, yeah.
Record executive. I like that.
Contributor to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's another big one. So we're back here talking about your very storied music career. And I was curious, why music, just as a general question? There's so many other creative pursuits in the world you could have gone after. Why did you gravitate towards music?
Well, I was always into music, even as a kid. I remember being like really little and just imagine having like these daydreams, like being in a band. You know, I'm talking about like I'm in first grade and just laying in bed, like just picturing myself with my friends, like playing guitars. And for whatever reason, it just always appealed to me. Yeah. I always listened to music. There was always music on in my home. Like my parents were always listening to records.
Did they have eclectic tastes, or did they
a specific? For the most part, they had really bad taste in music. Yeah, I
think everybody's parents have that same taste in music.
But I you know, as the '70s went on, kind of in retrospect, my dad was into some cool stuff, because I do remember hearing quite a bit of Steely Dan and George Benson, so which I absolutely love to this day. So. But
ebbs and flows, right?
Yeah. But when I was really young, they actually listened to the Association. Yeah. And if you don't know the Association, just look up.
Pretty dorky,
look
right?
up the Association Windy, and it is the corniest, most ridiculous music you've ever heard. Yeah.
So you had a very intrinsic need to not make that kind of music.
Yeah.
That's where the power violence comes from, right? Yeah.
That's where the immediate rebellion kicked in. But actually, kind of tied to what you're asking is, originally I pictured myself as being a filmmaker. Like I thought I would grow up and be a director, and I'd put out movies because I was really obsessed with movies. You know, in addition to music, I always thought that I'd be a musician, but I thought my profession would be a filmmaker. Yeah. And then
you were dreaming big.
Yeah.
I'm gonna direct, and then on the weekends I'll go tour with my band.
Exactly. Why not?
Yeah.
So I graduated high school in '87. So in '88, I started taking film classes at De Anza College in Cupertino, California. And I'm like, holy shit, film stock costs what?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And I'm 18, and I have how much in my bank? I have $150 at the most at any given time, and it costs how much to buy like 5 minutes of 16 millimeter film stock, and how much to have it processed, and like, fuck that.
Yeah.
You know?
Pre-digital, it was an effort to get something on film.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the cost of entry these days is like, okay, you got a camera,
it's a cell phone.
Go.
Yeah,
go. Exactly. Don't even buy a camera. Just have a cell phone.
You can shoot better quality video on a new iPhone Max than they shot the Star Wars prequels on.
Right.
That's a true fact. You can. I mean, that's how
it's insane.
But yet, 35 millimeter film stock is still outrageously expensive.
It just got more expensive.
Yeah, it's just outrageous.
So I think that's why I kind of eventually gravitated towards, maybe I should. I never thought that I play music professionally, and I never have. It's always been just a passion and a hobby. But I lost my train of thought.
Why music?
Edit.
That's fine. No, all good. But just in terms of why,
always thought it would be
why music over filmmaking, essentially,
right?
Right.
Why
did it win out?
Well, you know, why I kind of decided probably to start my label. You know, because that was been a year or two later. It's like, well, I'm not going to be a filmmaker, but I've always had this creative drive to like put out stuff, to, you know, create something. And it's like, well, it's not going to be film, but I'm surrounded by these people who run record labels, and and I could probably do it. I have the resources to learn how to do it.
Right.
Maybe I should just do that. And I always, because I was always digging for like the most underground sort of bands, and there were a lot of them who I felt weren't getting the recognition they deserved. I'm like, well, maybe I'll be that guy.
Yeah.
You know, I'll start a label.
You'll
I'll
be the
put out their
arbiter
stuff.
of cool.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Hey.
And what's really weird is, because you'd mentioned with Slap a Ham how it became known as like the power violence label. That was kind of the identity of the label eventually. But at first, like most things, it was kind of like wonky, and everything I put out was a little bit different. But then,
Yeah, I guess was that your goal at the start?
well,
Or did that just,
my
just
goal
happened upon?
my goal at the start was like, I mean, because this was the 80s, like kind of how I was describing how punk was still, it wasn't like, factioned off into like all pop punk or all metal thrash or all this or all that. It was like all the bands still kind of played together. So you listen to all that. So it wasn't like I was going for a certain identity. It was just like, well, I consider all this punk, and I want to help out all these bands who I really like. And the weird thing is, like, probably the most impressive releases I put out were just the very first ones when I didn't know what I was doing, because the second record I put out was a Melvins record.
Yeah.
And then the next one was a No Use for a Name record.
Yeah.
And I put out the very first Fu Manchu record.
Nice.
And stuff like that. And then
You weren't overthinking at that point.
Yeah,
is what that was.
It was just like
you were
at
just
the
trusting
time,
your instinct.
I'm just like, these bands are awesome, and no one else is putting out records for them. I want to do it. And then, several years later, I look back and like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I'm the guy. Yeah.
That's right.
That leads into another question I had. Like, what was the benchmark for someone that you were going to release on your label? Like, what were you looking for? What did you want to release on the label?
I just had to like the band. I just had to really like the band. I don't know. I just felt it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like there was a certain, a checklist or being the arbiter of cool. Like, okay, well, no, it honestly was just, I would have this gut feeling, because there were a lot of bands who were playing the same style, and it's like I thought they were fine, but they just didn't hit me in the same way. Like, I feel passionate about this band, and I really want to put out something by them. And then there were others where I'm just like, yes, fuck yeah. I want to put out something by this band.
Yeah.
What didn't make the cut? What was there a line where you're like, nah, this band isn't for my label, or this just isn't amazing?
I don't know, there was a lot of them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I once you start putting out records, then you start getting demos from bands, and
He's like it was Slap a Ham Records, not put out shit records.
Yeah, well, it was just like one step above put out shit records, because if you judge by like a lot of the demos they got. But it's kind of strange. There's a lot of stuff I turned down. One of them, very famously, so Ron Ashton actually sent me a demo of like some band he was in the 90s. And it was just like, it was like, punk rock and roll, 70s sound and stuff. I forget what the name of the band was, but I got it, and it wasn't for me. Like, I thought it was fine. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, there are a couple of demos I got like that, but by like, known scenesters or ex-scenesters or whatever the case may be, like, hey man, this is my new thing. You're like, okay, that's cool, but it's not my sound. Like, my label, at that point, my label had established a certain sound and genre that I was kind of sticking with. It was a certain identity, the whole power violence scene that became a scene in the 90s. And that was like not part of it. It didn't mean that I didn't like it, but I'm like, I also equally felt, I'm like, I would do you a disservice by putting out your record, because the people who like you aren't going to find your record because it's on my label. And the people who just automatically buy stuff from my label are going to hate it, because it's not the genre that they're going for.
Right.
And so I wrote back to everybody who sent me a demo, and I sent him, I don't remember it specifically, but I would have written him back and been like, hey man, thanks for sending this. It's really cool, but I'm I can't help you out. Yeah. Apparently that like weighed heavily on him. Like, when he died, I swear to God, Dan, the guitarist from Spazz, he's just like, dude, check this out. He sent me a link to Ron Ashton's obituary.
Oh no.
And there was a thing in there where
no.
where Ron Ashton had like, you know, in the 90s, he had kind of like, I don't want to say hit rock bottom, but he was kind of like going through a rough patch. And I guess he was actually quoted in this obituary that I read. He's like, even Slap a Ham wouldn't put out my record.
Oh,
I'm like,
no.
Oh no!
Shit! Like I bummed out a legend to the point that it's in his obituary.
Oh,
a dude
man.
from the Stooges.
No press is bad press on that.
Yeah,
but-
exactly.
Switching gears just a little bit. I want to ask you how, because music is so digital now, and our relationship with music is so digital. And because you can buy songs individually now, how do you feel like people's relationships with music has changed? Not necessarily due to the lack of physicality, but I mean, when was the last time somebody just listens to like a record anymore from start to finish? Like,
oh yeah.
How do you feel like that the music industry has changed in that regard? And there's got to be some good and some bad to it.
God.
But walk me through like how that process has changed for you.
I don't even know where to start with that because I grew up in an era when you buy one record, like you save up, you find that one record, you take that one record home, you put it on, you sit there with the cover and you're like looking at it while you're listening to it and you're listening to the whole thing.
And that gets spins for like 3 months for you.
Front to back.
Yeah.
You're looking at all the lyrics, you're looking at the liner notes, and looking at all the pictures. And even if you don't like it, you're like, well, shit, I bought this. Maybe if I listen to it again, it'll get
I gotta
better.
act like I like this
it's
now
like,
for
well,
at
maybe
least a month.
You convince yourself because I've
You're
invested in this.
I already spent $5 on this, so hopefully it'll grow on me, and you should just keep listening to it because, I bought it.
What a terrifying way to exist, because I can always remember being able to go into it was Virgin Records, which still dates me.
Yeah.
But you could go in and listen to CDs before you bought them. Like that was a revolutionary thing for me at the time.
Yeah.
Of like, do I like this?
Which
Let's
is
see.
cool.
Don't like it, I'm not gonna buy
I
it.
think it's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. We've known each other since 4th grade, 5th grade. So we used to go into Virgin Records all the time and listen to stuff. And yeah, same thing. Even though I never had vinyl, same thing. You'd buy a CD and you'd sit there and you'd read the lyrics. You'd listen to the whole thing, start to finish. But I guess maybe the flip side is, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because it's all digital and because you can just do singles now. I mean, part of what you wanted to do with Slap a Ham Records was to get people out there.
Yeah.
I feel like music is a little bit more accessible because you can just listen to one song, and you can find it digitally. Anybody in the world can find it now.
It is cool as far as distribution because that was always the biggest stumbling block is like how do you get heard and you're doing it like the slowest way possible back then. It's like, okay, let me put out this tape and I'm gonna send it to a couple like Xerox fanzines and wait a couple months for them to review it, and
so wild.
hopefully someone's gonna read that review and be inclined to put $3 in an envelope and send it in the mail.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna get that a week later and send it to them or not. And and then you send it to them and they'll like it or not. It's like the slowest way possible to get known. Where it's now like I could pick up my phone, be like, and just upload it and
direct message 10 influencers and get it pushed out in front of people.
Exactly.
And
And
it's
it's
out there
there's pluses and minuses to it. And just to be able to get your music out there, I think that like if you're in a band now and you're trying to make it. There's no way you're going to make money off of your music. It's just out the window.
Yeah, the physical music has gotten less valuable.
But I think
it's
that the best thing, that's the biggest advantage is that you can get it everywhere.
You can get it out there. Though,
And like what you do is you tour on that and you make money on merch, which is the sort of thing that isn't just everyone can just grab. It's you make tons of, you have like 10 t-shirt designs and all sorts of cool tchotchkes.
It's become the music is a feature of the brand, which is a band that you like. So like bands are now an entity that sell a vibe or a mentality. Or
in my opinion, you should put out an album and just make it free for everybody. That's like the best possible way to promote your band. Make it free for everyone to download, have it on every streaming service, and just
That's why I'm going to say something's going to get me in trouble, but that's why to me it's
who?
unbelievable that Taylor Swift is bothering to re-record her records. That seems like the dumbest thing. Because to your point,
she needs mastering rights. That's what's going on there.
Yeah, but
all
still,
the original recordings are owned by somebody else.
Right, I know, I get it, but what I'm saying is like we just said, like the records cannot be the biggest part of her revenue stream. The touring is, the merch, all the other stuff. But we're going okay. One question.
But that's also part of like music has become. There was a day back when it was just about making the music. Now it literally is like you have to have a digital identity, you have to have a brand, you have to have your merch, you have to have all
let's
this.
start our Bandcamp and our Instagram
you have to have this
or whatever,
whole
and get our
pipeline
influencers
that your audience is going through.
Yeah.
And it's so the just making music part of it has shrunk, and it's now like making it's making a movement is really what it all becomes.
Yeah. One of the questions I've always wanted to ask you is, being a part of bands with varying degrees of success, some very high, some right, whatever. What is that honestly like when you're making a song together? The creative process of collaboration, right? How much give and take is there before it's like, like if you're making a record, let's just say, I mean, your records have like 40 albums, but I'm saying just say like a 10 album record. How many songs are like, okay, these 2 are like my songs and I feel like that, versus these 3 tracks are not mine. And what's that process like of making a record and collaborating with other people to come up with a sound that you are a part of, and you get a say in, but it's not just your say?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, it's different. It's like any relationship, whether it's a work relationship or a friendship or a marriage or whatever. I mean, being in a band is like being in a marriage. It's like you're connected to these people, and you until you decide to break it off, or maybe you're gonna be in the band forever. And I mean, there's plenty of, especially metal bands who do look at Anvil. It's like dudes who are 65 and Lips and whoever the other guy are still out there touring and love it.
Yeah.
But I mean, your dynamic is different with every single person, and every band is it's never the same. And some bands, like maybe I'm the guy who writes everything, and everyone else is just like, hey, did you write anything new? And like you're just like you're complimenting each other, but maybe like I'm the main guy who writes everything, or maybe everybody contributes, and you find a way to kind of patch that all together, and it's always different, and that's what's exciting and kind of fun about it.
Yeah.
I mean, like with Spazz, we started out where each one of us would show up at practice like, oh, I've got the song, and we'd just teach it to each other, and it kind of like at a certain point it kind of like gels into like, oh, this is our sound, so it kind of starts coming together.
That's so
but
fun.
then it kind of evolved to this point where we'd each come with parts and throw them together. So like we all contributed to songs, and then it reached a point towards the very end where we wouldn't even write anything. We would just show up at practice and come up with riffs on the spot, be like, yes. And then like, what would sound good with that? This. And we would just like it was to the point where we were so connected, cool. It would just be on the spot, like this into this, into this, into this, into this. And it's like, yeah, that's the song.
What dynamics inside, I mean, you've been in a number of bands at this point, like what dynamics inside a band made that process easier? Like what made a band more collaborative or less collaborative? Like what are the things that you would be looking for as an artist or just in general as a group? As far as
I think you just have to be open, I guess.
Okay.
Just open to ideas and suggestions, and because I've worked with plenty of people who aren't that way, who just like, what do you mean you want to change that, or what do you mean like don't use that, or like no, you have to be open to like you come up with ideas, and once it's coming together, be like, you know what, that one part actually doesn't work with this. It should go.
How it goes, and
and you just have to be like, you don't take it personally, or it's like because you're all trying to build this, you're trying to create this thing that is like this shared. I don't know how to describe it, but
shared experience for the audience.
Yeah. It's like you're all like, that song kicks ass.
Yeah. How long in your experience, how long does it take for a band to start looking at stuff from a macro level of this is our sound? You know what I mean? Because I imagine when you start a band, it's like for the first record, you're just trying to make good songs.
Yeah.
But then after maybe the first record, is it like, okay, we have a established kind of ethos or sound now? How fast does that take hold in a band?
In my experience, it's been at least a couple of years. I'd say like at least 3 years, if not more. I mean, with No Use for a Name,
That's a long time.
No Use for a Name, they didn't really kick into their true sound. The band, I think, in my opinion, I think that was it Leche con Carne, that album that came out on Fat in I want to say
Milk with Beef.
Yeah. That came out in, I think it was 95.
Okay.
At the time, I was working at Fat Records.
Working at Fat Records.
Yeah, I wasn't in the band, but I couldn't get away from them, so I was working at their label. but it came. I think it came out in '95. So at that point, the band had already been around for 8 years.
Yeah.
Something like that. And I feel like that was a record that they finally like dialed it in. Like, this is what this band is meant to sound like. And I think from there is where it kind of like progressed. It was just like a deeper progression of that sound.
Right.
I don't know if you agree, but
I don't know. I mean, you would have a more unique perspective than I would on it, because I think probably the No Use for a Name records that I'm most familiar with are the ones that they had already, the Fat Record stuff where they'd already kind of established their sound, but yeah, that's cool. 3 years. Wow. That's surprising to me, but that makes sense, right? Because to a certain point, it's like, you don't know what your band sounds like until you've really internalized, all of you have internalized it, So
what do you think about like the fans in the world that invariably, whenever a band starts to like pick up, and if it takes that amount of time to find their like true sound that is that band's sound, there's always fans in the world that are like, yeah, well, their older stuff was better.
Oh yeah.
But that was like, they didn't know who they were yet,
Right,
but that was better.
Well, back in their demos were so much better.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's always going to be that. I don't know. I've been that guy too.
Have you?
Yeah, I'm that guy with like stuff like Metallica. I'm like, no, I only like the first 2 albums. I don't even like Master of Puppets. It's just the first album.
Was it you, Shane, that I was having a conversation about Metallica? I know all of 2 Metallica songs.
Yeah.
And those are the Metallica songs.
Yeah, but to be fair, look, I'm not trying to slam dunk on Metallica. I think there's like 10 Metallica songs everybody knows, and then they don't.
The rest is all, it's a guitar and drums.
Have you seen? Have you seen that documentary they put out? There was the documentary that they were putting out called "Some Kind of Monster." They were recording a record at the same time.
Fantastic.
Yeah, the Black Key, Dan Patrick of the Patrick Carney's his name of the Black Keys. He was Dan Patrick, the ESPN host and golfer. Patrick Carney said he was like, that is bar none the best documentary about being in a band ever filmed. He's like, it is the most raw, like, that's what a band is like, where it's like, there's times you just hate each other. But especially those guys, it's like, we're so successful. What are we going to do? Break up? We're not. Of course we're not.
Right.
And they just work through, like a marriage. They just work through it, But okay, good to know that another real musician is like, this is a great.
No, it's true.
I've still never forgiven Metallica for ruining Napster for everybody.
Yeah, I know. Party poopers. Narcs.
Let's bring it back.
Yeah. What is the best part about going on tour, and what's the worst part about going on tour?
I think the best part is just hanging out with people and meeting people, and what's cool is when you come back around and see them again, and like you've made friends, and that's the thing that I think kind of for my wife was like blowing her mind when we first got together, is that my best friends are actually all around the world.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
My best friends are not from where I grew up. My best friends, my best friends in the world are my friend Shigeru, who lives in Yokohama, Japan, and Dave Whitty, who's in Richmond, Virginia, and Tony Forresta, who's down in Tampa, and friends over in Amsterdam and stuff like that. Like
intercontinental.
They're truly my best friends, and like we connected through music and just this mutual appreciation of each other's work, and just bonding over the years, just through the scene, and just being able to visit each other when they're in town, and you get to hang out and stay at each other's houses and vice versa. And yeah, I mean, for me, that's the best part. If you want to go worst part, I mean, I know you have a time limit on this show.
Thank you. We're good.
Go forever. I'm sleeping on floors. Basically touring America. Like tour. If you're gonna go on tour any part of the world. Just don't tour the States. Yeah, I mean, go to Europe once.
There's a big middle part of America that isn't crazy exciting.
No, it's not. It's not even that. It's just as a band, America. Just the States, they just treat you like shit. Like
really?
you don't get any respect. You get nothing like that. If you go to Europe, even as just a indie nobody punk band, you always have. Usually the venue is pretty nice and has a decent. Even if it's a crappy venue, you always have a place to stay. You usually have a meal at night. A place to stay, and when you wake up in the morning, there's a meal for you or a spread of some sort. Like they actually take care of you. You get paid. Yeah. They're looking after you. Here it's just like you roll into town. You're on your own. You're 100% on your own touring the States. Like
you're a product.
Yeah,
you're a
the
product.
Club doesn't give a shit about you. They're not helping you out in any way. In fact, like the venues, the bigger venues, when you get to that point, like they're trying to take a cut of your merch sales, and you're like, Really? What did you do? You booked your cut is when everyone shows up at your venue. Stupid. You don't get you didn't do any. You had no business in my band's merch. Stuff like that.
So how has the genre of punk changed as you've been involved with it over this very many years of experience inside that world? So like when you started, there were probably some tenets of like, this is punk music, this is what it means to be punk.
Yeah.
Have you seen that evolve as you've grown older and as the genre sort of, it's not faded away, but it like a number of other genres have taken prominence in the world.
Yeah.
So like the punk scene is still around, but a little less in the world. So what?
Yeah, I mean it's still there. You can still find that DIY spirit, especially in LA. Like you go to kind of like down like central LA, South Central LA. I mean, there's a whole like backyard punk scene of like, crusty LA punks who just like, they're just, there was, I remember when I was still living out here, maybe like 6-7 years ago, there's a place I want to say it was in Downey called Perez Tire, which is a tire shop in Downey. They had punk shows. I played there once. It was like being in the Road Warrior.
Yeah.
And it was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
It was just absolute fucking.
I was gonna say concert at a tire shop. That's punk rock, baby. That's awesome. Yeah.
It was mayhem. It was just like
fucking car up on a jack in the corner,
shitty and dirty, and there were tires everywhere. And it was like people doing coke and drinking and whatever. No one gave a shit.
Slipping on oil slicks.
It was totally fun and ridiculous, and that it's still out there. You can find it, or you can go to Hot Topic, and if that's your flavor of it, then so be it.
Was Hot Topic ever punk?
No, but but you can find No Effects and Names for Name stuff there.
But then again, we've already established it. We don't telling people what is or is not punk is not punk. Decidedly.
Sure. But I can probably unequivocally say that Hot Topic in the mall. Not very punk.
Anything that's next to a Foot Locker is decidedly not as punk. Yeah.
But the thing, I mean, it's fun to like clown on stuff like that. But I mean, the reality of it is, if that is your reality and you enjoy it, then so what?
Exactly.
Who cares? If that's your thing, then go for it. You don't have to be like going to a shitty tire shop, in like a really
Although
dangerous.
you should, because that sounds fun.
Oh yeah, in a really dangerous part of town. But I mean, to me, that's what appealed to me as a kid was like just the danger of punk shows. Not so much the danger like I wanted danger, but I think what I loved at those early shows was the unpredictability. And I think that's what is missing from like when people just say punk generically now, that's what's missing is the unpredictability. Now it's very predictable. You know exactly what you're getting when you go
formatted,
Exactly. You know exactly what the bands are going to sound like. You know what the venue is going to be like. You know what the crowd's going to be like. You know what you're in for. Whereas like, I feel like early on, that's what was so exciting about the punk show. You
never knew if Darby Allin was going to smear shit on his face in the middle of the show.
Yeah, no, I went to a Gigi Allen show, and actually, I don't know if you ever saw the picture of me and Gigi Allen.
I did. I've seen it. Yeah.
But you don't. That's actually one of the most violent shows I've ever been to.
Really?
It's like everyone was there to fight each other, and they did. But I mean, stuff like that. It just makes for great stories later on. And I mean, I don't need to be beat up, but it's funny. It's just funny to have the stories and the experience. But
it's fun to get punched once or twice at a punk show. Yeah. So as we kind of start to wrap up our drinks here, I guess the last question I would have for you is, I'm sure that a lot of people are going to listen to this and they're going to be inspired to get into music and especially to start a band.
And to seek out some old school punk music.
Punk music, which is, I mean, where can people find Slap a Ham stuff now? Can they find it digitally or is it?
No.
Just can they write to you? Can they just send you a letter?
No,
there is no way to get it.
No, I mean the whole catalog. The thing is like that's how punk my label was like. There was no contracts. There was no nothing. Like as far as I was concerned, I agreed with the band. Like okay, we're gonna put out this release together, but I never owned it. I never had the rights to it. And some of the bands have re-released their stuff on their own labels, on other labels, and especially like bigger ones, like Fu Manchu and stuff. Right. Once they got bigger, they reissued stuff, and all of them have been kind enough to be like, hey, here's we're gonna reissue this. We'll send you a copy and give you credit. I'm like, that's all I want. That's cool. But Sorry, what was your original question?
Well, my question is, people. I think that people are going to listen to this and get inspired to get into music.
To like find
What's
stuff.
your advice for people who want to get into a band today? Not necessarily make it, but just if you want to get into a band, what are kind of the base level steps that you should probably take?
Pro tips for band formation.
Yeah. It sounds so dumb, but I mean, and not to be all Nike, but just do it.
Just do it.
I mean, that was like my approach from the very beginning. I was just
Nike, please don't sue us. For using
I
your
mean,
slogan.
that's what it's like. I love this. I want to do it.
Yeah.
So I just did it. I didn't know how to play guitar, but I played guitar anyway.
Yeah.
You know? I didn't know how to do a band, but my friends and I are like, hey, let's start a band. We don't know what the hell we're doing, but let's just do it. I mean, it really is as simple as that, and it doesn't mean that you'll suddenly create this scene that's gonna mushroom, into something that's big, but it shouldn't matter. I mean, if you're trying to create a product or be an influencer or whatever, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
You're going about it the wrong way too.
Then maybe not necessarily the wrong reasons, but you're pursuing something different. You're pursuing something different. You're not doing it because you love music. It's because you want to be an influencer.
It's marketable.
Or you want to be like, what you're trying to create an image or a thing, as opposed to, I genuinely love this and I want to create it. If you genuinely love something and want to create it, then create it. Whether it's painting or music or film, just do it. It doesn't matter if you're the only one who sees it. As a creative person, the satisfaction of outputting something. And once it's completed, once you look at the finished product, you're like, fuck yeah, this is awesome.
Done.
And it doesn't matter if anyone else, it's really awesome when like thousands of other people do see it. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But
that's a bonus.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I've always approached music, is like, I do it because I love it, and because other people like it, it's a huge bonus.
Nice.
That's it.
Awesome.
So real quick, top 3 hot bands for you right now.
Top 3. Oh boy. The problem is, for me, top 3 hot bands would be like really old stuff.
So
and like
top 3 bands you're listening to right now, then.
Sunhouse.
Okay.
The Free Design. Kites Are Fun. Look it up.
Okay.
You'll thank me.
He's like, and Kiss.
And Grateful Dead.
Oh.
Believe it or not, yeah.
Okay.
Never a bad choice. Grateful Dead.
All right. Well, last but not least, before we let you get out of here, if people want to find, like, are you doing anything musically right now that you're interested in, or that's interesting to you? And can people find you online to follow that stuff?
I'm not posting any music stuff. I'm actually, these days, I've been playing dobro. Strangely enough, I live in Kentucky, so
yeah, it's not that strange. Yeah.
What is dobro?
Dobro, it's like a square neck guitar that you play flat on your lap, and you play with finger picks and a slide. So it's akin to like old country, bluegrass, Hawaiian music, Delta blues, that sort of thing. I've been taking lessons for the past year, and I absolutely love it. For the first time in, I'd say, like decades, I enjoy playing just to play, and I don't have like an end goal of, I'm going to start a band, I'm going to do a label. I just sit in my basement and I play dobro for an hour, and
that's wonderful.
The time will go by and I won't even realize it, and I just love playing.
Yeah. Just joy for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Spazz 2, dobro, boogaloo.
Yeah. I mean, eventually I'd like to collaborate with people and probably record stuff. I have no desire to tour or whatever, but it'd be fun to record and maybe put out some releases. But aside from
I'll throw
that,
your own advice back at you. Just do it, man.
Yeah,
Just do it.
exactly. And I'm doing a radio show in Louisville on a local station called WXOX. I go by the DJ name The Professor.
Yeah.
And I have a weekly show, and I play every week. It's totally different. I've done all hardcore shows. I've done all blues shows. I've done country and classic rock and yacht rock, and it's just whatever I feel like doing, and it's stuff like that. So I'm actually on Instagram under The Professor WXOX, and
when can people tune in to hear The Professor?
It's 11 to noon Thursdays Eastern Standard Time. You can find it at artxfm.com. It's
Nice.
streaming, or you can download the WXOX app on your smartphone. And there you go.
Awesome.
That's very cool.
Chris, thank you so much for swinging by and hanging out with us, have a couple drinks. We really appreciate it. And this is great. We'll do it again.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers, everybody. There we go. Yeah. Nice.